Chapter 1. The inciting incident grand drawing room of the Belgrave Hotel was alive with whispered gossip and the soft clink of champagne glasses. Velvet drapes framed tall windows through which the dying light of a June afternoon cast long shadows across Oriental rugs. At one end of the room, a string quartet tuned their instruments, while a procession of elegantly dressed guests drifted between gilded mirrors and marble mantelpieces. It was here, amidst the finery of London's most exclusive social event, that the illustrious Hercule Poirot found himself unceremoniously interrupted by a most unusual sight. Monsieur Poirot reclined in a high-backed armchair, his trademark moustaches immaculately curled, surveying the scene through half-closed eyes. He had arrived only moments earlier, summoned by a telegram as cryptic as it was urgent. Mystery 8-day pocket watch immediate assistance requested Lord Wilmington. Belgrave Hotel little grey cells were already alight, but before Poirot could summon Captain Hastings for his usual repartee, a commotion at the doorway drew every eye in the room. A chambermaid, her face ashen, hurried forward bearing a small, leather-bound case. "Monsieur Poirot, Lord Wilmington, he's dead." Her voice trembled, and she collapsed into the arms of a sympathetic guest. Poirot sprang to his feet with astonishment so genuine that even the most skeptical onlooker might have believed it. "Dead," he repeated, steadying himself with a hand on the arm of his chair. "Explain yourself." "Mademoiselle." The chambermaid clutched the case as though it were her only lifeline. His lordship returned to his suite just after luncheon. The bellboy heard a cry, then nothing. When Sir Reginald Smythe went to check on him, he found the door locked. He had to fetch a key, and she hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. He found she opened the case with trembling fingers to reveal a highly polished gilt pocket watch, its cover engraved with the initials EW, the watch's face elaborately filigreed, lay ominously cracked. Poirot's keen eyes darted across the classically handsome countenance of Sir Reginald Smythe, who now stood uncomfortably close to the centre of attention. The baronet's usual composure appeared on the brink of collapse, his shoulders stiff, lips pressed in a thin line. "You found him like this, you say?" Poirot asked softly, each syllable crisp, deliberate, demanding, in his chair. "The bed, please. Describe exactly what you saw." Sir Reginald swallowed hard in his chair. "Monsieur," his head was slumped forward almost as if he'd fallen asleep. The pocket watch was open on his lap. He bowed his head. It's grotesque, the sight." His fingers fidgeted with the lapel of his jacket. Poirot inclined his head slightly, absorbing every nuance. The pocket watch, how long had it been this way, with a broken face? "Was it like that when you discovered him?" The chambermaid shook her head, tears glistening. "No, monsieur. When I cleaned yesterday, it was whole. It must have been broken today after his lordship's luncheon." A murmur of surprise rippled through the assembled guests. Poirot let the silence deepen, his grey eyes scanning each face. There was Lady Winchester, her pale beauty strained by shock. Mr. Clarence Beaumont, shifting his weight as though eager to be anywhere but here, and Lady Florence Thorne, whose lips twitched with barely concealed apprehension. Poirot folded his hands behind his back. "Mzamas, I beg you remain calm. No one is to leave the premises until I have completed my examination." His voice, though gentle, carried the unmistakable authority of one accustomed to command. Now who last spoke with Lord Wilmington, who saw him alive after luncheon? Hands rose hesitantly. Poirot's mind already began to sort motive from opportunity, truth from deception. The stage was set. The suspects assembled, and the little grey cell stirred with anticipation. In that opulent room, beneath the veneer of polite society, a web of secrets awaited unravelling, and only Hercule Poirot could see its every thread. Chapter 2. The first cloose there in Lord Wilmington's suite remained thick with tension as Poirot stepped past the chambermaid and Sir Reginald into the elegantly furnished room. Rich tapestry covered one wall, and the windows overlooked the hotel's manicured gardens. Yet the beauty of the decor contrasted starkly with the grim tableau, the gilt pocket watch resting open on AV. Velvet cushion, its delicate crystal face fissured as though struck by an invisible hand. Poirot's gaze flicked from object to object, noting the slightest irregularities. He stooped to examine the watch more closely, turning it so that the initials EW caught the waning daylight. The engraving was flawless, the metal soft with age, yet the crack in the crystal was unnatural, a jagged line that ran from the numeral 12 down to 6. How could such an object, treasured by its owner, have been so deliberately damaged? Tell me, Poirot said without raising his voice. When was this watch last wound? Did Lord Wilmington admire its mechanism earlier today? The bellboy, standing near the door, cleared his throat. I polished it yesterday evening, Monsieur Poirot. It was ticking perfectly then. When I passed by his suite this morning, the door was locked, so I assumed he was still asleep. Locked from within, Poirot repeated, arching a single brow, and no unusual visitors before luncheon. The bellboy shook his head. None. Sir, his lordship dined alone, as was his habit. He sent word that he wished no company. Poirot nodded, absorbing the information. He then turned his attention to the rest of the suite. A low chaise lounge sat beside a marble-topped table strewn with letters and a half-empty decanter of sherry. Next to the decanter were two crystal tumblers, one still containing a small measure of amber liquid. Poirot picked up the glass and sniffed it delicately. Sherry, he murmured, perhaps taken after the meal. He allowed a moment before turning to the bellboy. Was that glass here when you polished? Or did someone place it later? The bellboy hesitated. I recall seeing only the decanter yesterday. There were no glasses on the table, but yesterday afternoon I only passed through swiftly. I didn't inspect every detail. A faint smile curved Poirot's lips. 'Tis been. Every detail matters. He set the glass down gently and continued his silent survey. His eyes fell upon a writing desk. Papers lay scattered, including a letter half-slid under the blotter. Poirot lifted it and read, My dear Edmund, our arrangement remains as discussed. The funds will be delivered in person. Do not disappoint. Yours, C. He crumpled the letter thoughtfully. C. could be anyone. Clarence Beaumont, perhaps, or even Lady Thorne's cousin, Charles Cavendish. Poirot mused aloud. He replaced the note and lifted the blotter with one finger, revealing a small indentation on the desk's polished surface as though someone had pressed a signet ring there. The impression matched neither Lord Wilmington's crest nor that of any known guest. Poirot gently pressed a fingertip into the hollow and examined the smudged relief. A discovery. Hastings, he would have said, if Hastings stood nearby. But of what? A soft cough distracted him. Lady Florence Thorne stood near the window, her handkerchief pressed to her lips. Her eyes, rimmed with unshed tears, betrayed an inner turmoil. Poirot turned to her. Madam Thorne, you look as though you wish to speak. Did you know Lord Wilmington well? She straightened, inhaling as though to steel herself. We grew up in the same social circles, though we were never close. He was a rather enigmatic man. She paused, her gaze drifting to the broken watch. He confided in me once. Not about fortune or inheritance, but about regrets. That he could not change the past. Poirot inclined his head. Regrets of the past, he repeated softly. Intriguing. Did he ever elaborate? She shook her head. No. He simply said that time was a cruel master. Monsieur Poirot, I thought it a figure of speech at the time. Now, I wonder if he meant something more," her voice caught, and she pressed a gloved hand to her heart. "I feel there are things I do not know." The detective's eyes gleamed, and that is precisely why I am here, madam, to uncover the unknown. Leaving Lady Thorne to her reverie, Porrett's attention flitted to the suite's hearth. A gentle fire crackled, though its warmth was overshadowed by the room's grim purpose. On the mantelpiece, a solitary photograph in a silver frame depicted Lord Wilmington stone-faced, standing beside a carriage, but something about the image unsettled Porrett. He picked it up and examined the back. No inscription, no date. He turned the frame, noting a fine film of dust on the glass's edge. "This has not been moved for some time," he murmured. He set the photograph back in place and exhaled slowly. "Interesting. Nest's pause," he whispered to himself. A sudden noise made everyone start, the distant rumble of a train pulling. Away from the hotel station, the thunder of wheels on rails resonated through the thick walls. Porrett closed his eyes a moment, as if listening for something more. The faint echo of hurried footsteps, perhaps, or the soft click of a door locking. When he opened his eyes, he strode to the window, parting the drapes. Below, the station concourse teemed with live porters, passengers, and the ever-present whistle of steam. But nothing obvious. No hurried escape. No abandoned luggage. Yet Porrett's instincts told him that somewhere amid that bustle lay a hidden clue. Returning to the center of the room, he addressed the gathered servants and guests. "Mzamas, we have learned that the watch was intact only yesterday. We have a mysterious letter signed C. We have curious impressions on the desk and symbols of regret whispered by a friend, and yet the greatest clue remains the broken crystal itself. Why should Lord Wilmington's pocket watch be shattered when he valued it so dearly?" He paused, letting the question hang in the air. A hush fell. The only sound was the crackling fire ant, the distant clatter of the train. "Reflect," Porrett continued, "on what you know of his acquaintances, who might have had access to this suite at midday, and who might wish to send a message so unmistakable as this broken glass." Eyes met. Eyes, uncertain alliances flickering like candle flames. Each person felt that sting of suspicion, as though Porrett had prodded at a wound that would not heal until the truth was revealed. The chambermaid pressed her lips together. Sir Reginald's hand trembled at his side, and Lady Thorne's fingers tightened round her handkerchief. Somewhere, hidden behind polished manners, lay the motive, waiting for the little grey cells to extract it. Porrett stepped back, satisfied for the moment. "I shall require the watch and this letter," he said, motioning to his valet. "But first, let us assemble the suspects in the drawing-room. There we may observe their reactions when confronted with these items." As the servants began to carry the evidence away, Porrett allowed himself a brief smile. The first clues were in hand, yet like the finest lacework. They held 1,000 gaps that only patient inspection could fill, and so the game continued, each move bringing him closer to the heart of deception. Chapter 3. The gathering of suspects. Porrett's invitation echoed through the corridors of the Belgrave Hotel, summoning every guest and servant connected to Lord Wilmington's last house. In the grand drawing-room, the same room where intrigue had first made its entrance, chairs were arranged in a wide semicircle facing a low table upon which lay the cracked pocket watch and the letter signed C. A hush descended as each person took their place, glancing anxiously at one another. First came Sir Reginald Smythe, his tailored morning coat buttoned so tightly that tension in his shoulders was palpable. He seated himself at the far left, avoiding direct eye contact with the broken watch. Next was Lady Florence Thorne, still pale but steadying her breath. Porrett noted her gloved hands resting on her lap. Knuckles whitening as she gripped a delicate handkerchief dotmer, Clarence Beaumont entered with measured grace, nodding curtly to Poirot before settling beside Lady Thorne. His dark eyes flicked round the room, calculating, as if weighing each face for weakness. Behind him lingered the chambermaid, clutching the leather case that had first borne the telltale timepiece. She took a seat at the edge of the group, her posture rigid and witting participant in this assembly of secrets. Lady Winchester followed, her silver hair drawn into an elegant chignon. She carried herself with quiet dignity that belied the tremor in her voice when she spoke to Poirot. Beside her sat Mr. Edward Whittaker, Lord Wilmington's solicitor, whose solemn expression suggested both professional concern and personal shock. Finally, at the far right, stood Mr. Albert Crowley, the hotel manager, whose presence reminded everyone that no one was above scrutiny. Poirot rose to begin. His posture was immaculate, his hands clasped behind his back. Mesdames et messieurs, I thank you for your punctuality. You have all been chosen because each of you had access or opportunity to his lordship's suite this afternoon. Now, I wish to learn what each of you saw, heard, or did between 12 and 3 o'clock. Let us proceed in turn. He gestured to Sir Reginald. Baronet, will you begin? Sir Reginald inhaled sharply. Certainly, Monsieur Poirot. After luncheon, I returned to the drawing-room to fetch a book Lord Wilmington had lent me. I knocked on his suite door twice, but received no answer. I found it locked, so I returned to my own study to await his return. He frowned. I did not see anyone else enter or leave his suite. Poirot inclined his head. A book. Which book? The Anatomy of Regret, by Lord Arlington. Sir Reginald's voice quivered. He believed it relevant to his reflections as Sir Reginald spoke. Poirot observed subtle cues, the slight tremor in the baronet's hand, the way his gaze drifted toward Lady Thorne. He filed the details silently. Poirot turned to Lady Thorne. Madam, she cleared her throat. I was in the hotel salon, awaiting my carriage. I had a brief conversation with Mr. Beaumont regarding a charitable endeavour. I did not see Lord Wilmington after luncheon, though I received a note from him this morning concerning an old family portrait. She paused, her lips pressing together. He asked me to join him, but when I reached his door, I found it locked. An old portrait. Poirot repeated, curious. We shall examine that matter later. He shifted to Mr. Beaumont. You mentioned funds. Did you meet with Lord Wilmington today? Beaumont's jaw tightened. Yes, but not until after luncheon. I arrived at 2 o'clock to collect a sizable sum for our philanthropic fund. I nodded and was told by his valet that his lordship was indisposed. He glanced at the photograph on the mantel, as though recalling a memory. I left a sealed envelope on the desk. When I returned at 2:30, the door was still locked. Sealed envelope, Poirot acknowledged. And the valet, did he witness anyone else enter? The valet saw no one. He left the envelope and returned to his duties. Beaumont exhaled firmly. I had no reason to linger. Poirot leaned forward, steepling his fingers. Mr. Whittaker. The solicitor adjusted his spectacles. I had an appointment scheduled for 1 o'clock to discuss Lord Wilmington's will. I waited outside his suite until 1:15, then knocked. No response. I presumed he was otherwise engaged. He swallowed. I did hear a muffled sob, though. It came through the door. A sob. Poirot repeated, eyes narrowing. Human emotion in that moment. Not recorded by any of the others, I believe. Whittaker nodded. Yes. It seemed as if someone was weeping inside. Poirot thanked him and turned to Lady Winchester. Madam, did you receive any message today? Lady Winchester's voice was soft but clear. I received a card this morning asking me to attend Lord Wilmington's suite at 3. I arrived punctually, only to find the hotel staff milling about. No one had delivered the invitation to him. She shook her head. But I do recall seeing Mr. Crowley near the doorway at that time. Porritt raised his eyebrows. Thank you, madam. He faced Mr. Crowley. And you, monsieur. The manager cleared his throat. I delivered a message to Lord Wilmington's valet at 12:30. It concerned a late reservation he placed for dinner. Crowley's posture was rigid. His forehead glistened. That was before the murder. So to speak, Porritt watched. As each suspect absorbed the other's statements, a subtle tension rose. Alliances formed in furtive glances. Fractures appeared in forced smiles. The detective allowed a moment before speaking again. You have all mentioned finding the suite door locked. Only Sir Reginald accessed it, after fetching the key. Yet someone or something broke the crystal of the pocket watch. That act demands intention. Does anyone wish to explain why Lord Wilmington's cherished timepiece would be shattered? Silence followed. The watch gleamed under the chandelier's light. Its jagged crack-like wound across its face. No one moved. Porritt observed a flicker of guilt in Beaumont's eyes, a tightening of Lady Thorne's lips, and a fleeting relief in Sir Reginald's expression, as though he were thankful that the focus remained on the object, not on him. Porritt allowed the silence to deepen, then lifted the letter. And this letter, signed C, would its author care to reveal why they threatened disappointment if the funds were not delivered? Again, no one spoke. The letter lay before them, a silent accusation. Porritt replaced it and stood erect. Msamus, you see how circumstances overlap yet diverge. Each of you had motive, means, and opportunity. But the truth, Mest's pause, is singular tomorrow. I shall resume my inquiries. For now, I ask only this: reflect on your actions, for by morning the little grey cells will require all facts. No detail is too small. With that, Porritt concluded the gathering, as the guests departed one by one. The atmosphere remained charged. The broken watch and the unsigned letter remained behind, inert yet potent symbols of the mystery. In the shuffling footsteps and whispered farewells, Porritt detected the faint strings of fear. Alone now, he moved to the table and touched the cracked crystal gently. Patience, he murmured. The gathering is complete, but the game has only begun. He turned toward the window and gazed out over the gardens, as though seeing beyond their manicured hedges into the dark hearts of those who walked within. Chapter 4. Porritt arrived following morning, a pale London sun filtered through the lace curtains of the Belgrave Hotel's private salon, where a small gathering awaited Porritt's official entry. Word had spread that the great detective would conduct his inquiries in proper fashion, and the room was ranged with meticulous precision. A settee for the witnesses, a side table with fresh water and crystal glasses, and a central chair for Porritt's commanding presence. Though he had already observed the crime scene and questioned some attendees, this marked the formal commencement of his investigation. Porritt entered with his customary flourish, his slight bow of the head, hands clasped behind his back, and mustaches impeccably curled. His grey eyes, sharp as polished steel, swept across the assembled suspects. Msamus, he announced softly, "Thank you for reconvening. Today, we proceed in earnest." He paused to allow the weight of his invitation to settle. First, I wish to hear from Monsieur Dupont, the valet. He possesses vital information concerning Lord Wilmington's last known interactions. Monsieur Dupont, slender and deferential, rose from the settee. His navy valet's uniform was spotless, though his expression betrayed fatigue. "Monsieur Porritt," he began, voice low, "yesterday, after fulfilling his master's request for a sherry at precisely 1:15, I tidied the hearth and returned his watch to the cushion as instructed. He hesitated, lowering his eyes. His lordship looked troubled. He held the watch in his palm, staring at its face for several minutes before placing it gently on the cushion. Dupont paused, as though the memory pained him. He then bade me fetch a particular letter, which I delivered at 2 o'clock, sealed in an envelope bearing no markings, but the seal of C. Poirot inclined his head, absorbing every nuance. You observed his agitation. He asked, did he speak of any concerns? Dupont shook his head. Only that time felt unfair. He whispered. He tapped the crystal lightly and said, I would give anything to rewrite yesterday's hours. He pressed his hands together. I did not understand then. Poirot allowed a moment before turning to the witnesses. His gaze landed on Sir Reginald Smythe. Would you care to comment, Baronet? Sir Reginald shifted uneasily in his seat, as though aware his discomfort was on display. You mentioned fetching the key yesterday. Did you notice anyone else behaving oddly in the hallway? Sir Reginald's voice was clipped. No one passed. Me. But I thought I heard a whisper like someone stifling laughter just before I inserted the key. He glanced toward the door, his expression haunted. It seemed as though the corridor itself laughed at my intrusion. A ripple of unease spread through the group. Poirot raised a gloved hand. Excellent observation. Laughter, whispered, behind closed doors, may hold greater meaning than overt words. Now, Lady Florence Thorne, what of your note and the portrait you mentioned? Lady Thorne's hands trembled as she smoothed her gloves. I arrived at his suite at 3. As you know, I rapped lightly and, receiving no reply, leaned closer. I smelled the sherry lingering in the hall, then a faint perfumed jasmine, very strong. It was unfamiliar to me. She glanced toward Mr. Clarence Beaumont, whose jaw tightened. Does anyone here wear jasmine? Beaumont flushed but remained silent. Poirot's eyes flicked to Lady Winchester. Madam, Lady Winchester offered. A serene nod. Indeed, I received a card summoning me to discuss that very portrait of family heirloom painted by Lady Wilmington's great-grandfather. Lord Wilmington wished its provenance confirmed. When I mentioned the perfume, I thought it curious my own jasmine sachet is secure in my wardrobe. She lifted her skirt slightly to indicate no trace. Poirot raised a finger. Curious, indeed. Monsieur Beaumont, you had business at 2:30. Did you notice any scent upon entering the suite? Beaumont drew breath. I noticed only the sherry. No perfume, no other disturbances. The valet escorted me in briefly before I left the envelope. When I stepped out, I saw Lady Thorne approaching his door. He paused, and easily. We exchanged no words. The detective tapped his cane lightly. So, jasmine perfume before 3. Hidden laughter, tinted regret expressed by his own words. And repeated failed attempts to contact the deceased. Yet, none of you mentioned seeing the broken watch until after I wait. Why leave the crystal unsewn upon discovery? A hush fell. Poirot let the question suspend. The assembled faces betrayed dawning realization, as though his query pried open a locked chest of doubts. Then, quietly but unmistakably, the hotel manager, Mr. Crowley, spoke. Monsieur Poirot. If I may, Crowley began, tone respectful. After the body was found, I secured the watch and placed it in the safe. I returned only this morning to present it, partly because I wished to avoid alarming the guests. His hands clasped the sides of his chair, but the broken crystal none of the staff dared touch it, fearful of destroying evidence. Poirot nodded. A prudent decision, but it reveals the watch remained untouched overnight. Therefore, the crack must have been the final act of the crime, or a message left by the culprit. He tapped the watch's box, a crime both subtle and theatrical. He stepped forward, addressing all. You have each described your movements in the corridor, your impressions of scent and sound, and your anxieties. But one element remains unspoken: the official theory of accidental death. The coroner's preliminary report suggests Lord Wilmington succumbed to heart failure, Zemus. What heart failure creates a shouting crack in a crystal face? None. Murmurs rippled through the group. Porrett's gaze centered on Sir Reginald and Beaumont, then settled on Lady Thorne. We must dismiss the accidental. We pursue intention. The shattered crystal is no accident, but the final stroke of deceit, and the scent of jasmine unquestionably artificial signals that someone wished to veil their presence with distraction. Whoever brought the perfume sought to mask another odor. What might that be? Faces paled. Each person realized that in the room itself, beneath the refined surface, lay the foul stench of betrayal. Porrett allowed them to squirm beneath his scrutiny. I shall speak to each of you privately. Until then, reflect upon every detail, every footstep, every breath, every fragrance, for in those subtleties lies the heart of this enigma. As the gathering dispersed once more, Porrett remained, staring at the watch and inhaling the faint trace of jasmine that clung in the corners of the room. In that silent moment, he wove each whispered clue into the tapestry of his deduction. The game, indeed, had only just begun. Chapter 5. Initial interviews began. The late morning sun slanted through the tall windows of Lord Wilmington's private study, lending an almost conspiratorial warmth to the wood-panelled room. Porrett sat behind the heavy mahogany desk, the broken pocket watch and the sea letter laid out before him. Today, he would engage each suspect in a direct interview, peeling back layers of politeness to expose hidden truths. His little grey cells thrummed with anticipation. Sir Reginald Smythe was summoned first. The baronet entered with a measured gait, his face carefully composed. Porrett invited him to sit opposite, offering a glass of water which Smythe accepted with a slight tremor in his hand. Porrett observed the subtle quiver of the fingers as he raised the glass. Noting how the baronet avoided eye contact, you mentioned laughter in the corridor. Porrett began softly. Did the sound strike you as mirthful or malicious? Smythe paused, brow furrowing. Malicious. Monsieur cold? Mocking, he admitted. Like glass scraping glass, Porrett nodded, storing the detail. And after you fetched the key, did you touch the watch yourself? Smythe's cheeks coloured. No, I did not dare. I thought to preserve the scene. His hesitation spoke volumes. Next came Lady Florence Thorne. She entered with an air of fragile dignity, pale gloves folded in her lap. Porrett watched the faint sheen of moisture in her eyes. Madam, you spoke of jasmine. Is that scent familiar to you? She nodded, voice wavering. My aunt used a jasmine sachet in her writing desk, but I have not touched it in months. Porrett leaned forward. Yet you smelled it in Lord Wilmington's hall. She swallowed. Yes, I believed it to be my own sachet, until I found it and touched it home. The contradiction shimmered in her voice. Porrett let the moment stretch. Before moving on, tell me, did Lord Wilmington ever confide fears to you? Lady Thorne inhaled sharply. He feared betrayal from those closest to him. He said that often a friend's knife is the most painful. Her gaze flicked to the watch, and Porrett's heart quickened. She wore a ring bearing a tiny blade motif. Dotmer. Clarence Beaumont followed, his dark suit impeccable. He crossed his legs, deliberately, revealing a polished cufflink glinting in the light. Porrett studied it. You delivered funds yesterday. He began. What was your precise route to the suite? Beaumont cleared his throat. Down the west corridor it is the shortest. I knocked once. Then twice. I heard nothing, so I left. The envelope on the desk. Porrett tapped the letter. Did you examine the envelope seal? Beaumont's gaze shifted. I saw only a plain red seal. No crest. I assumed it was standard. Poirot smiled thinly. A curious omission for a banker such as yourself. Beaumont's jaw clenched. The funds were confidential. He preferred discretion. A tick in his left eye betrayed his conduct. Monsieur Dupont was summoned next. The valet approached with a bowed head, his crisp uniform pristine. Poirot regarded him kindly. Dupont, you were the last to see Lord Wilmington alive. Describe his mood. Dupont's eyes darkened. He was restless. He held the broken watch before it was broken and muttered, "Time too heavy to bear." He looked as if expecting a summons. Poirot's gaze sharpened. "And the letter you delivered, did he read it in your presence?" Dupont hesitated. He broke the seal and read silently. His face flushed red. He crumpled it and handed it back, saying only, "Assure him I will not fail." Poirot folded his hands. The seal of C suggests a clandestine trust. Who is C? Dupont shook his head. "I do not know, monsieur." Mr. Edward Whittaker entered with purposeful steps, spectacles perched on his nose. Poirot gestured to a nearby chair. "You heard a sob behind the door." "Yes." Whittaker nodded. "A deep, guttural sob too heavy for grief. You're charged with madness." Poirot leaned in. "Did you recognize the voice?" Whittaker's lip curled at the memory. "No, but it was a man's voice, low and ragged." Lord Wilmington did not sob. He would not show such weakness. Poirot tapped the desk. "Then someone feigned emotion to mislead us." Whittaker's exprise was grave. "Possibly, but who would possess such theatrics?" Poirot's eyes gleamed a silent challenge for resolution. Lady Winchester was escorted in last. She sat with impeccable poise, her silver hair catching the light. Poirot poured tea and offered it to her. She accepted, her fingers hovering delicately round the cup. "You received an invitation to view the portrait." Poirot reminded her. "What is its significance?" She sipped, composed. "The portrait once belonged to my family." Wilmington sought verification of its authenticity. He believed it hid a clue to an inheritance. Poirot unfolded his mustache. "An inheritance, secret one, hidden in paint and canvas." She nodded. "He said the artist embedded a cipher in the brushstrokes." Poirot's mind raced. The idea of hidden symbols enticed his deductive appetite. One by one, Poirot closed his notebook, each interview etched into his memory. He rose, smoothing his coat. "Msamas," he announced, "thank you for your candor. Each of you has provided vital angles on the day's events, but there remain discrepancies between what was seen, what was heard, and what was felt. Tomorrow, I shall seek out the portrait and examine the cipher. For now, reflect on your words, and consider who among you possesses both the skill and motive to shatter a crystal and shatter life." As the suspects filed out, tension crackled in the hushed salon. Poirot remained alone, the broken watch ticking in his pocket, a subtle reminder that time, though fragile, was the key to unlocking every secret. Chapter 6. First false lead. Late that afternoon, Poirot summoned the suspects back to the Belgrave Hotel's drawing room. The afternoon light had faded to a muted glow, and the grand chandelier cast long shadows across the Oriental rugs. The broken pocket watch and the mysterious letter lay once more on the low table, now accompanied by a single white glove. Poirot paused before the assemblage, fingers steepled, his gaze sweeping each face in turn. "Msamas," he began, voice calm yet charged with purpose. "We have gathered every clue, the laughter in the corridor, the scent of jasmine, the crumpled letter of C, and the smashed crystal of the pocket watch. Yet one detail demands further scrutiny." He lifted the glove. This glove was found in Lord Wilmington's suite. It bears a peculiar embroidery, 3 interlocking circles. His stir ran through the group. Lady Florence Thorne's eyes flickered. Sir Reginald's lips twitched. Poirot continued. Monsieur Beaumont, you admitted delivering funds at 2:30, placing your envelope on the desk. Yet this glove was discovered beneath that very desk. As if dropped by your hand, Beaumont drew in a sharp breath. Monsieur, I assure you this glove is not mine. My own gloves are bespoke, with a single silver bead at the cuff. He lifted his sleeve to show the cuff, clean of any embroidery. I have never seen this design. Poirot inclined his head. Curious, and yet the glove bears faint traces of sherry, possibly the same vintage that Lord Wilmington favoured. He tapped the watches box, and fingerprints on the envelope match your own. Beaumont's face paled, and a tremor passed through his fingers. Sir Reginald spoke up, voice tight. Then Monsieur Beaumont must have been in the suite after the murder, seeking to remove evidence. It is clear he is guilty. Murmurs of agreement rippled. Lady Winchester drew in her breath. Lady Thorne's hand tightened round her handkerchief. Poirot held up a hand. Not so quick. Nest's pause. We must test the evidence before drawing conclusions. He rang for Monsieur Dupont, the valet, who entered promptly. Dupont. Bring the gloves that Monsieur Beaumont wore at the station today. Moments later, Dupont returned with a small case containing 2 gloves, Beaumont's own, each marked with the single silver bead. Poirot compared them to the embroidered glove. As Monsieur Beaumont has shown, these are not his. Therefore, we must ask, to whom does the embroidered glove belong? He allowed the weight of the question to settle. Lady Thorne inhaled sharply. I have no knowledge of such a glove. Her eyes darted briefly towards Sir Reginald. Sir Reginald's composure cracked. I never remove my gloves. I do not recognize this design. He leaned forward, Poirot. Are you implying I planted this glove to frame Beaumont? Poirot neither confirmed nor denied. Instead, he observed the reactions. Sir Reginald's forced indignation, Lady Winchester's apprehensive glance toward the door, Beaumont's mounting anxiety. Then, gently, he addressed the room. It is too hasty to accuse. We must trace the glove's origin. At that moment, the door opened to admit Mr. Edward Whittaker, the solicitor, bearing a small parcel. He placed it on the table before Poirot. Monsieur, this arrived by registered post an hour ago. Addressed to Lord Wilmington. I neglected to mention it. Poirot broke the seal and withdrew its contents, a richly embroidered glove matching the one on display, and beneath it, a note, to whom it may concern. You will find one of Lord Wilmington's gloves in tonight's box, a gesture of misguided courtesy. A hush fell. Poirot read the note, his expression thoughtful. Notice that she has again made a theatrical entrance. This glove was not dropped by Monsieur Beaumont, but placed there deliberately by the author of the letter, perhaps to mislead us. He looked to Beaumont. You see, Monsieur, this evidence implicates you, yet derives from the same hand that sent the note. Beaumont exhaled, relief and confusion mingling on his face. Poirot turned to Lady Winchester. Madam, does this glove resemble any in your collection? Lady Winchester traced the embroidery with a fingertip, her manner composed but distant. It matches the pattern on several of my evening gloves, though I thought I had secured them all last night. Lady Thorne's voice trembled. I recall seeing Lady Winchester's gloves in a box near her wardrobe. She glanced at Winchester. Surely, one could have fallen into the service box by mistake. Lady Winchester's composure wavered. Perhaps. She glanced at the glove, then at Poirot. I cannot say how it came into that note. The group exchanged uncertain glances all, suspicion shifting, coalescing, then scattering like leaves in a breeze. Poirot folded the glove and placed it beside the note. Thus, our first lead, Monsieur Beaumont, proves false. A deliberate misdirection. orchestrated by C. The glove was a red herring, a plant to divert us from the true mastermind. He paused, letting the revelation sink in. The room remained still, the grand clock ticking relentlessly. Tonight, I shall revisit the suite, study the glove's fibers under the lamp, and perhaps detect another clue. He looked each suspect in the eye. As for now, reflect upon this. An enemy who seeks to manipulate your guilt is far more dangerous than one who acts openly. Trust no surface evidence. With that, Poirot dismissed the gathering. The suspects rose, breathless, their earlier certainty replaced by unease. Poirot watched them depart, then collected the glove and the note. Alone, he ran a finger along the embroidered thread, murmuring, "The game grows deeper, the adversary more cunning. But the little grey cells will not be so easily deceived." He closed the glove's case and extinguished the lamp, confident that the true path lay ahead. Chapter 7. The Psychological Gamulate on the evening of the second day. The Belgrave Hotel's library lay draped in shadows, or lamps cast pools of amber light upon leather-bound tomes, and the rich scent of aged paper mingled with the faint trace of jasmine from earlier inquiries. Poirot convened his select suspects there, away from prying eyes, for a deliberate exercise in psychological unraveling. Each seat was ranged so that no one could see another's full profile. Tensions would surface in isolation. So Reginald Smythe was the first to enter. He paused at the threshold, adjusting his cravat with deliberate care. Poirot greeted him with a warm nod. "Baronet, please be seated here," he said, pointing to a chair angled toward an empty corner. "I wish to speak of your impressions of Lord Wilmington's behavior." Reginald sat, smoothing his coat. "Anything, monsieur?" he asked, trying to mask unease. Poirot removed a small velvet pouch from his coat. "Before the murder, you believed our unfortunate victim was troubled by past regrets, yet you also believed him serene enough to meet Lady Thorne at 3. He let the contradiction hang. Reginald's brow furrowed. He did send for her, yes, but when she did not come, he must have been disappointed. Poirot produced a tiny mirror. "Look here, Reginald. What do you see?" Reginald peered into the reflective glass and recoiled slightly. "My face flushed. I see guilt." Poirot tapped the mirror gently. "Guilt need not rise from crime alone." Nest's pause. "You felt you had disappointed your friend by failing to prevent this tragedy." Reginald swallowed, his composure slipping. I did all I could." Poirot nodded, then excused him with a gracious bow. Next, Lady Florence Thorne entered. Gloved hands clasped before her, she took the seat across from the east lamp, its light accentuating the tremor in her fingers. Poirot began softly. "Madam, you spoke of jasmine and unfamiliar perfume in Lord Wilmington's suite. Yet earlier, you claimed your aunt's sachet lay untouched at home." He allowed her to reflect. She inhaled shakily. "I thought it was his gift to me." Poirot leaned forward. "And yet you did not wear jasmine that afternoon. Why imagine a gift?" Lady Thorne's eyes welled. "Because I feared I had misread his intentions." Poirot produced a pressed flower from the pouch. "This bloom, found in your glove's embroidery, is jasmine. It suggests familiarity with the scent more than acquaintance." She stared at the petal, horror dawning. "I embroidered it years ago, for a lover who adored that fragrance." Her voice cracked. "But that was long ago." Poirot allowed her distress to deepen before rising and guiding her from the room with tender courtesy. Clarence Beaumont paced next, wary of Poirot's calm demeanor. He seated himself before a stack of ledgers Poirot had discreetly placed on the table. "Monsieur Beaumont," Poirot said, "you manage vast sums for charity, yet you delivered funds personally, rather than transferring them discreetly as usual. Why undertake that risk? Beaumont cleared his throat. Lord Wilmington insisted. He said only I could be trusted with this task. Porritt produced an envelope, the very one Beaumont had left on the desk. He slid it across the table. Inspect it now. What do you feel? Beaumont opened it and withdrew the letter signed. See? His hands shook. Trepidation? That signature, see, haunts me. Porritt leaned back. You fear, see. Yet you once believed yourself above such threats. Has your confidence been misplaced? Beaumont's face reddened. I underestimated the stakes. I thought my reputation protected me. Porritt's eyes gleamed. Reputation, like crystal, is fragile. One crack, and it shatters. With a polite nod, he dismissed Beaumont into the corridor. Monsieur Dupont, the valet, was next. He sat stiffly on the edge of his chair, eyes fixed on the patterned carpet. Porritt studied him kindly. Dupont, you delivered both sherry and the sealed letter, yet you did not notice the broken crystal until after others had seen it. Dupont swallowed. I was serving. Monsieur, I attend to tasks as they are given. Porritt placed the pocket watch in front of him. Touch it. Dupont obeyed, fingertips brushing the cracked face. He flinched. It hurts to touch. Porritt nodded. As the weight of guilt would. Dupont's voice trembled. I served the master faithfully. I would do no harm. Porritt rose. Let your conscience rest from now. Dupont left with a bow. Relief mingled with lingering anxiety. Edward Whittaker, the solicitor, entered under lamplight. Porritt regarded him quietly. You heard the sob behind the door, suggesting human anguish, but you failed to question its source immediately. Whittaker adjusted his glasses. I assumed grief. Porritt produced the photograph from the mantelpiece, a silent witness. This image shows Lord Wilmington standing proudly beside his late father, whose gaze hides disappointment. He let that sink in. Whittaker's lips thinned, a disappointment unspoken. Porritt leaned close. You know of a clause in the will that disgraced a family member. Whittaker stiffened. Perhaps. Porritt withdrew a second document from his coat, placing it before Whittaker, an unsigned draft amendment bearing an erasure. You prepared this, do I not err? Whittaker's glance wavered. I drafted many revisions. Porritt's tone was gentle, and erased those you feared revealing. But you left traces. Whittaker nodded. Defeated, Porritt dismissed him, with a courteous incline. Finally, Lady Winchester took her turn. She sank into the chair with regal poise, a cup of cooling tea in her hand. Porritt asked softly, Madam, the portrait's cipher, why would Lord Wilmington trust you with its secret? She set down the cup, its ring of condensation marking the table. He believed I possessed scholarly insight. Porritt laid the glove from the first false lead beside. The tea, yet this glove was embroidered in your own design. It implicated Beaumont, but derived from you. Lady Winchester's composure faltered. I did not intend harm. Porritt studied her. No. But you intended distraction, a scholar misled by an academic puzzle can overlook the heart of a crime. She nodded slowly, troubled. Porritt stood, hands clasped behind him. Mzamas, I trust that this exercise in subtle provocation has laid bare your hidden fears. You have each faced a mirror of your own motives, and all reveal cracks tomorrow. We advance to a secondary event, an unexpected complication. For now, rest and contemplate this. The mind that wields fear as a weapon is the most dangerous of all. As the last guest departed the library, Porritt remained alone amid flickering lamplight. He arranged his cues thoughtfully. Laughter's echo, fragrance's lure, documents erasure, and now the tremor in each suspect's psyche. The psychological game had begun, and each player had shown their hand. Yet the final move waited in the shadows, where intention glimmered like a hidden thread. and Poirot, with his little grey cells alert, felt certain that the weaving of these threads would soon reveal the true pattern of guilt. Chapter 8. A secondary mystery the next morning. Dawned overcast, the skies heavy with promise of rain. In the hushed corridors of the Belgrave Hotel, a fresh urgency stirred. Poirot, summoned from his breakfast, rioted the sweet corridor to find Monsieur Crowley, the hotel manager. Awaiting him with a grave expression, Monsieur Poirot. Crowley began, voice low. There has been an incident in Lord Wilmington's private safe. When I opened it to retrieve the original will, I found it missing. He swallowed. Instead, the safe contained only a single sheet of paper blank, but for a single word scrawled in crimson ink. Regret. Poirot's eyes narrowed. The will disappeared. Crowley nodded. Yes. The safe was locked last night. The only key is with Lord Wilmington's valet, Monsieur Dupont. No one else should have had access. Poirot offered a small nod. And the sheet was it sealed inside. Or placed after the fact. Crowley gestured toward the safe's interior. After, the inner compartment showed no disturbance beyond the removed envelope. He lowered his gaze. It appears someone replaced the will with this message. Poirot's little grey cells sprang to life. A second crime, committed covertly, suggested the murder remained at large and bold enough to strike again. He turned to Crowley. Assemble everyone in the drawing room immediately. We shall confront this new development together. Moments later, the suspects reassembled as shadows lengthened. Sir Reginald Smythe sat with the same tight posture. As though bracing himself for calamity, Lady Thorne pressed her gloved hands tightly in her lap. Beaumont entered with forced calm. Glancing nervously at the table where the will once lay, Lady Winchester and Mr. Whittaker lingered near the portraits. Their faces etched with apprehension, Poirot stood before them, the blank sheet unfolded on the table like an accusation. Samus, he began. Last night, someone removed Lord Wilmington's will from his safe and left this note. Regret. We no longer pursue only a broken watch and a shattered heart. We seek the missing testament that names his heir. He allowed the silence to stretch. Whomever possesses that will wields the power to seize fortune and legacy. Beaumont's face blanched. He rose abruptly. Monsieur Poirot, I swear I had no knowledge of that will's whereabouts. My business with his lordship concerned only charitable disbursements. Poirot inclined his head. Indeed, and yet you walked the west corridor yesterday, where the safe is situated. Did you notice anyone loitering near the suite? Beaumont glanced towards Sir Reginald and Lady Thorne before speaking. No one, only the moonlight glinting off the door handle. His voice faltered, and he sank back into his seat. Poirot turned to Dupont, who stood with a bowed head. Valet, you lock and unlock this safe daily. Did the key ever leave your person? Dupont's face drained of color. The key remained in my waistcoat pocket throughout the evening. I did not remove it. Poirot studied the valet's countenance carefully. Dupont's lips quivered. I guarantee it, monsieur, he added, voice strained. I would never betray my master's trust. Very well, Poirot said, yet we must entertain the possibility of a duplicate key. He waved a hand. Crowley, have the hotel locksmith examine the lock for signs of tampering, monsieur. Crowley dipped into a notepad. Yes, monsieur, I will attend to it at once. Poirot moved to Sir Reginald. Baronet, you retrieved the key yesterday. Could you have created an impression to replicate it? Reginald sputtered. Me, manufacture, a duplicate. Never. His indignation seemed genuine, yet Poirot's eyes suggested otherwise. He turned to Lady Thorne. Madam, you passed by the safe's corridor after your visit. Did you perceive any unusual sounds, perhaps the faint click of a lock? Lady Thorne hesitated, brows knitting. I recall a soft creak, like a hinge in need of oil. But I thought it the sweet door settling. Her fingers tightened. I did not think then that someone else might be inside. Porritt paused, then addressed Lady Winchester. "Madam, the will concerned your family portrait. You alone possess the cipher key that Lord Wilmington believed encoded the inheritance clause." Lady Winchester's composure faltered for an instant. "I have studied that portrait for years, but the will itself, I never saw it." Her voice trailed. Porritt's gaze shifted slowly to Mr. Whitaker, solicitor. "You drafted revisions to the testament. Your pen bears the authority of a legal signature. Could you have inserted a clause favorable to yourself?" Whitaker's chest tightened. "I am bound by professional ethics. I would never alter a will for personal gain." He straightened. Though a flicker of doubt crossed his features, Porritt allowed their denials to resonate, then held up the sheet of paper. "And this single word, regret, speaks volumes, a message from the past, a warning of sorrow to come. It is as theatrical as the broken glove, yet darker in intent. It signifies that someone among you desires not only wealth, but the power to dictate Lord Wilmington's final testament." He stepped back. "I shall inspect the safe and examine the lock. Then we must consider one more angle. The effect of the missing will on each of you, for motive is stronger where greed and fear converge." He gave each suspect a piercing look. "Tonight, reflect on the absent document, for it holds the key to both fortune and ruin." As they dispersed, a soft patter of rain began against the windows in the silent aftermath. Porritt remained alone with the blank sheet. He traced his fingertip over the crimson word. "Regret," he murmured, "a warning, a confession, or a threat. The little grey cells shall decide." Outside, beneath the swaying awnings, the rain washed the pavements of Belgrave Street. Yet within those walls, a darker storm gathered, a tempest of deception and ambition that only Porritt's steady mind could calm. The missing will, like the broken watch, was a symbol of fractured time and promise. And as the detective prepared to probe deeper, he knew that every drop of evidence mattered in this unfolding deluge of intrigue. Chapter 9. Hidden Connections. That evening, Porritt gathered the remaining suspects in Lord Wilmington's private study once more. The heavy velvet curtains were drawn against the gathering darkness, and only the glow of a single lamp illuminated the room. On a side table lay the broken pocket watch, the blank regret note, and now an old family photograph in a tarnished silver frame. Porritt sat behind the desk, steepling his fingers, his grey eyes shining with purpose. "Samus," he began quietly, "we have examined the visible clues. Now we turn to the threads that bind you together, those connections hidden beneath. Polite society." He placed the photograph on the desk. It showed for young people at a country house Lord Wilmington, Lady Winchester, a youthful Clarence Beaumont, and a slender woman Porritt did not recognize. "This image," he said, "dates from 20 years ago, an event celebrated at Emberley Manor. Who here can name the fourth person?" No one spoke. Porritt smiled. "She is Eleanor Cavendish, cousin to Lady Thorn. The tragic figure, she perished in a chariot accident shortly after this photograph was taken. But her presence here speaks volumes." Lady Thorn stiffened. "My cousin Eleanor. She was dear to me. She swallowed. But that was long ago." Porritt tapped the image, "and yet, Madam Thorn, you inherited Amberley's estate when your aunt died. You and Lord Wilmington quarrelled bitterly over those grounds." Lady Thorn's eyes flicked to Sir Reginald. "He mediated the settlement." Sir Reginald cleared his throat. "I sought only fairness." Porritt nodded, then turned to Beaumont. "Monsieur Beaumont, You contributed funds to restore Amberley's gardens, but only after Wilmington's death. A curious timing for a philanthropist. Beaumont paled. I gave when I could be seen as generous. Poirot's lips quirked. Public generosity can mask private interest. You wished to ingratiate yourself with Lady Thorne, did you? Not. Beaumont's eyes darted toward her, and she looked away. We were childhood friends. He mumbled, I hoped to renew our acquaintance. Poirot noted the unspoken affection and moved on. He addressed Lady Winchester. Madam, you authenticated the Cavendish portrait at my request. Yet your family's crest is hidden in the corner of the painting and omission you discovered, but failed to disclose until after the will vanished. Lady Winchester's composure faltered. I wished to confirm its provenance discreetly. Poirot leaned forward. Discretion that protected whom? Perhaps. She inhaled. You imply I sought to influence the inheritance. Poirot's gaze was unyielding. The evidence suggests you knew more of Wilmington's plans than you admitted. The solicitor, Mr. Whittaker, shifted in his chair. This photograph, Poirot continued, was delivered anonymously to my study this afternoon. It was slipped beneath the frame of Lord Wilmington's portrait. The sender wished to remind us of old grievances. He paused, letting the implication settle. Who among you would resurrect decades-old disputes to secure a fortune? A tense silence followed. Poirot then produced a letter from his coat pocket, one he had recovered from a waste bin in the suite. He unfolded it carefully. My dearest Reginald, I cannot abide your interference in family affairs. Remember what happened at Amberley cannot be undone. If you overstep again, you will regret it. Sir Reginald's face blanched. Eleanor, he whispered. Poirot nodded. Written months before her death. Evidently someone preserved this letter, someone with access to her papers. He turned to Lady Thorne. You inherited Amberley and its secrets. You alone could have possessed this letter. Lady Thorne's cheeks flushed red. I found it among her things, she said quietly. I intended to destroy it, fearing her accusations might stain Reginald's name. Sir Reginald's hand flew to his heart. You would have destroyed proof that I sought to protect you, Poirot. Raised a finger, but the paper itself is a motive. Revenge for Eleanor's death. Yet the handwriting does not match her known samples. Someone forged her signature, someone skilled in mimicry. He looked sharply at Beaumont. Monsieur Beaumont, you admitted forging endorsements to influence donations. Could you mimic handwriting as deftly as you manage ledgers? His gaze lingered. Beaumont swallowed. I can imitate scripts when necessary. Poirot nodded. A talent used for malice or charity, depending on the wielder. He turned to Lady Winchester. Madam, as an art historian, you reproduce period scripts for restoration. You could replicate Eleanor's hand. She stood abruptly. So I am accused now. Poirot remained calm. Accused of skill, yet the forger must also have motive. Who would wish to implicate Sir Reginald in a vendetta to secure Wilmington's fortune? Lady Winchester's eyes darted. Perhaps someone jealous of his favoritism toward Florence Thorne. All eyes shifted to Lady Thorne. Her gloved hands quivered. I loved him, Eleanor and Reginald were like siblings. But after her death, he changed. He blamed me for not warning her of the coach's loose wheel. Her voice shook. He refused to speak to me for years. Poirot folded the letter. Old wounds can fester into deadly intent. He placed the forged letter beside the photograph. These hidden connections of familial tragedy. Unspoken resentments, clandestine affection form. A web, and at its center is Lord Wilmington's inheritance. The forger wished to revive Eleanor's grievance to distract suspicion and mask the true culprit. He paused and surveyed the room. One more connection remains, the nursemaid who cared. For Eleanor later entered Lady Winchester's employ. She spoke of a forbidden affair between Reginald and Wilmington's sister. now Lady Winchester's mother, Sir Reginald's face tightened. Absurd gossip. Poirot held up a second. Photograph. This one of two young women whispering in a garden. They are Reginald and Frances, your sister. She was heartbroken when their courtship ended abruptly. Sir Reginald clutched the armrest. It is and was irrelevant to this case. Poirot let the protest stand. Irrelevant perhaps to you, but relevant to someone who sought revenge. For broken hearts and broken promises, a connection concealed, now revealed. He turned to the solicitor. Mr. Whittaker, you prepared Frances's marriage settlement. You know of Reginald's continued affection and the fortune left to her progeny. Whittaker nodded. Pale. The settlement secured her future. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And perhaps inspired someone to claim that fortune instead. Silence engulfed the chamber. Poirot rose, standing before the photograph and letter. Ms. Amos, you see how your histories intertwine grudges, debts, affections, betrayals, the missing will, the broken watch, the forged letter, all are pieces in this mosaic of hidden connections. Soon, I shall reveal which thread leads to. The killer, he allowed them a final glance. Until then, ponder your bonds to one another, for in those relationships lies both motive and method. As they departed, each lost in private turmoil, Poirot remained alone amidst the dim lamplight. He gathered the photograph and letters, aligning them on his desk. The tapestry grows dense. He murmured, but the little grey cells will unravel it, one connection at a time. Chapter 10. Poirot's secret clue late that night. The corridors of the Belgrave Hotel lay silent beneath the hush of slumber, yet within Lord Wilmington's private suite, Hercule Poirot's little grey cells were alight. The detective moved, with deliberate care, lamp in hand, retracing every step of the crime scene as if time itself might reveal a secret now hidden. The shattered crystal of the pocket watch lay in its velvet case, an outward symbol of violence, but Poirot sought the invisible fracture, the imperceptible detail that would transform mere suspicion into absolute conviction. He began at the hearth, where earlier he had noted the half-empty decanter of sherry and its two glasses. Now, by lamplight, he observed the smudged rim of one tumbler and the faint indent of a single, slender thumbprint. Gently, he traced its curve with a gloved finger, unapproved discreet. He murmured, "This print, too small for the finger of Sir Reginald or Beaumont, suggested a dainty hand, perhaps that of Lady Thorne or Lady Winchester." He pocketed the thought. Poirot's gaze shifted to the writing desk. The blot lay in place, but the indentation from a signet ring remained. He drew his penknife and carefully lifted the blotter's edge. Beneath it, in the soft leather, lay a faint impression, 3 interlocking circles, the same embroidery as on the white glove from the first false lead. Yet that glove, he recalled, had been sent by sea to mislead. The motif belonged to neither Lady Winchester nor Beaumont. It was the emblem of Amberley Manor, known only to the Cavendish and Thorne families, a secret link to Lady Thorne's heritage. He made a mental note. Poirot approached the portrait of Lord Wilmington and his late father, last seen in the drawing-room. Therefrom had concealed a cipher, yet it also concealed something more subtle. He examined the ornate carving along the lower edge, a series of tiny notches, 6 in all, and evenly spaced. 6, the number of suspects at play. But why 6? And why these intervals? He tapped the frame gently and listened to the echo within, a hollow tone beneath one notch. With the tip of his cane, he pressed. A faint click answered. He exclaimed softly. A panel slid inward to reveal a narrow slot, just wide enough for a slip of paper. From his pocket, Poirot retrieved a scrap he had previously overlooked, a torn edge matching the handwriting of C. stained by the sherry that had dripped on it during the first night's inquiry. He inserted the note into the slot. The panel shifted further, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside lay an oblong metal object, the clasp of a pocket watch chain. Bearing a miniature key tiny enough to fit the hotel safe's lock, Poirot held. The clasp between thumb and forefinger, inscribed on its edge were the initials F.W., Frances Wilmington, Lord Wilmington's elder sister, long assumed deceased by all but one. Yet here was proof of her existence and her proximity. As Poirot turned the key over, he realized that someone had retrieved this key from the watch chain and used it to open the safe. The missing will, the empty regret sheet, and the theatrical notes all pointed to a hand that knew every secret of Lord Wilmington's family. A soft rustle in the hallway caused Poirot to lower his lamp. He extinguished it and slipped behind. The velvet drapes, silent as a shadow, through the gap. He saw Lady Winchester approaching, candle in hand. Her steps were hesitant. As though driven by guilt, she passed the desk, her gaze briefly falling on the hidden panel before she seemed to remember its exposure. Her shoulders stiffened, and she continued toward the portrait, even as her eyes darted with alarm, when she stood before the frame. Poirot observed every detail. Her gloved fingers trembled as she reached to adjust the painting. The candle's flicker revealed a flash of recognition in her eyes, an admission that she alone knew of the secret compartment. Poirot let her slip away into the night, confident that she carried fear as an unintended confession. Relighting his lamp, Poirot drew the drapes aside and examined the compartment once more. He retrieved the key and ran his finger across the engraved initials, Frances Wilmington. He whispered, "So, you live and you desire your brother's fortune. But why remain hidden?" For what purpose did see so confusion through? False evidence. The key explained the secondary crime, the theft of the will. Yet the crabbed inscription on the safe's replacement note, regret, spoke of remorse. Perhaps from someone coerced or misled. Poirot replaced the secret clasp and carefully reassembled the frame. He returned the compartment panel to its original position, then stood back and surveyed the suite. The broken watch, the missing will, the planted glove, all were pieces of a grander design. And at its center lay the sister presumed lost, living in the shadows of her own family's tragedy. He paused by the window, watching the rain-slick street below. The lamplight reflected on the wet pavement, forging a path of fleeting brightness. Poirot inhaled deeply. "The little grey cells have found the secret clue," he murmured. Now to unmask the true villain. He gathered the evidence, the clasp, the cutting of the note, the shattered crystal, and tucked them into his coat. Tomorrow he would bring to light the sister in hiding and the accomplice who aided her. But tonight he savored the thrill of discovery, knowing that the game's final folding was imminent. In the stillness of the suite, Poirot allowed himself a brief, triumphant smile. The secret clue was unearthed, and with it, the path to justice. An exquisite key turned at the right moment, unlocking the heart of deception. And as he closed the door behind him, the fragmentary shadows seemed to applaud his masterpiece of deduction. Chapter 11. Tensions rose the following morning. The atmosphere in the Belgrave Hotel hung heavy with unspoken accusations. Guests moved with forced politeness through gilded corridors, their voices hushed behind closed doors in the grand drawing room. Poirot awaited the suspects once more, seated before the low table bearing the pocket watch clasp, the blank regret slip, and the small key extracted from Frances Wilmington's chain. As each person entered, the tension was palpable like the hush before a thunderstorm. Sir Reginald Smythe arrived first, his usually impeccable posture slack with fatigue. He paused at the threshold, nodding curtly to Poirot before taking a seat. His eyes flicked anxiously toward Lady Winchester, who entered next. each step measured, her face composed but distant. She seated herself with deliberate care, smoothing her gloves as if to reinforce her composure. Lady Florence Thorne followed, cheeks flushed, glancing between Sir Reginald and Beaumont. Finally, Clarence Beaumont and Mr. Whittaker took their seats, exchanging loaded glances that spoke of dreams denied and fears awakened. Porritt steepled his fingers and addressed them quietly. "Miss Amos, last night I uncovered a hidden key belonging to Frances Wilmington, revealing that she is not lost to us but alive, and that someone among you conspired to remove Lord Wilmington's will. Today, we witness the effect of that revelation." He paused, letting the words sink in. The suspects shifted in their chairs, unease etched on their faces. Sir Reginald cleared his throat. "Monsieur Porritt, I find this most distressing. If Frances lives, then my only motive to secure Florence's future becomes secondary." He shot a look at Lady Thorne. "Madam, do you recall your own vow to destroy Eleanor's letters? Perhaps you feared her more than you admit." Lady Thorne's gloved hand slammed on the armrest. "Do not presume to know my thoughts. I acted to protect Reginald's reputation, not to conceal malice." Her eyes blazed. "Yet here we are, accused of plotting beneath one another's backs," Beaumont interjected, voice trembling with indignation. "And I, as a banker, am slandered for forging endorsements, yet the real forgery was of Eleanor's letter. Who among you taught thee the art of mimicry?" He leaned toward Lady Winchester. "You, as an art historian, surely have the skill to mislead the eye." Lady Winchester's expression hardened. "Accusation without proof? Monsieur Beaumont, it takes more than ink and a steady hand to break a person's trust." She raised her chin. "It takes greed." At this, Mr. Whittaker, who had remained silent, cleared his throat. "Greed, indeed, for what is a will but the ultimate expression of desire? And who among us prized desire more than the one who replaced that testament with a blank warning?" His gaze flicked to Sir Reginald. "Then, Beaumont, or is it the philanthropist whose charity masks ambition?" Beaumont's face reddened. "I mean no ambition beyond the good I can do." Whittaker leaned forward. "Yet you sought public praise when none was warranted." The two men glared, as though each word was a fresh wound. Porritt rose, raising a hand for silence. "Miss Amos, observe how your suspicions entangle you. Each of you, though innocent or guilty, now fears another. But fear can be a tool. It makes the guilty reveal themselves and the innocent stand firm." He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. "Let us test that resolve." He stepped to the table and picked up Lady Thorne's embroidered glove. The air grew still as he held it aloft. "This glove bears the emblem of Embleman or your family's crest. Madam, yet you claim it was planted by thee. I ask, why would Frances leave you such a signature, and why? If you wished to destroy her letters, did you preserve this incriminating token?" Lady Thorne's lips trembled. "I did not preserve it. I found it somewhat intact amidst my cousin's belongings. I thought to study it, to understand her final message." Her voice wavered. "But never to use it," Sir Reginald interjected, harshly. "A convenient excuse, Florence. You had access to her things, access no one else could claim so easily." Lady Thorne's eyes narrowed. "And you, Reginald, access to keys, to secret compartments, access to every hidden thing." A murmur rippled. Lord Wilmington's valet, Dupont, rose from a corner where he had stood quietly. "Monsieur Porritt, if I may," he said softly. "One of the glasses in the suite was found laced not with sherry but with laudanum." The room froze. Porritt nodded. "An important detail, Dupont. We overlooked it amid the spectacles of forgery. Notice how the victims of each clue were sedated into compliance, too calm to cry out." Beaumont's face paled. "Laudanum? That could only be administered slowly." He looked at Lady Winchester. "Your tea or cup are offered during the interviews, was it unmedicated?" Lady Winchester stiffened. "My tea was my own blend, and tainted. I trust Monsieur Dupont's impeccable service." She shot the valet a quick glare. Whitaker swallowed. "The valet served the sherry at 1:15 and brought my tea at 1:30. Only the sherry was drugged, not the tea served later." Puzzle and suspicion intertwined on every face. Porritt folded his arms. "We see the pattern. To sedate the master into a deep sleep, to steal his will under cover of night, and to use misdirection at every turn, false letters, planted gloves to cover the true crime." He stepped forward, addressing each in turn. "You, Sir Reginald, stand to lose not just your friend, but your hopes for Florence's future. You, Madam Thorne, have seen your inheritance slip from your grasp. You, Monsieur Beaumont, risk your reputation and your unspoken affection. You, Lady Winchester, stand between Francis's claim and your own authority over family treasures. And you, Whitaker, hold the power to validate or revoke every document." His eyes rested on Dupont. "And you, Dupont, whose loyalty was tested beyond service, who among you, when offered the law of inheritance, would hesitate?" Silence answered him. Then Lady Winchester rose in a sudden fury. "I will not stand here and be spectated. I did not conspire to poison or to steal. I sought only to preserve my family's legacy." She clutched her gloves. "If you suspect me, then search my apartments. Remove everything but suspicion itself." Sir Reginald followed suit. "And I will not be blamed for rights restored or broken secrets revealed. My conscience is clear." Lady Thorne rose, voice trembling. "We are all accused without proof." Beaumont and Whitaker also stood. The confrontation complete, Porritt held up a hand. "Sit. S'il vous plaît." One by one, they obeyed, breaths ragged. Porritt's gaze was serene. "Tensions have risen. Yes, but in these heated words, the guilty will slip, for anger marks those who fear exposure, while the truly innocent remain measured even when wrongly accused." He tapped the table. "I ask you, who among you has lost composure, and why? Remember that the poison made only one glass dangerous, the one meant for Lord Wilmington. That glass was placed beside your letter, your glove, your photograph, to mislead." He studied them closely. Lady Thorne's clenched fists, Beaumont's quivering lip, Reginald's reddening neck, and Winchester's shaking gloves. Finally, his gaze rested on Whitaker, whose spectacles caught the lamplight. "And you, Comrade Whitaker, remained calm throughout, yet it was you who handled the amendment drafts most closely. You knew how to erase a clause and how to replace it with regret." Whitaker's breath caught. Porritt pressed on. "This morning, the locksmith confirmed no duplicate key, meaning only Francis's tiny key could open the safe. Yet you, a solicitor, had access to that key when you supervised the removal of documents for safekeeping. You took it and returned it under the pretense of regret." Whitaker's hand went to his chest, but his expression was not one of shock so much as inevitability. Porritt leaned in. "You feigned grief, manipulated evidence, soured suspicion, and left me that key among watchpots for added misdirection." He pulled from his pocket the laudanum-laced cork. "This came from the sherry decanter, but the medical jar was in your briefcase." Whitaker's face slackened. "Yes," he whispered. I needed to control the situation." Porritt rose fully, voice gentle. "And control you did. Until now. The little grey cells have caught up." He turned to the others. "Mzamas, the tensions have revealed the guilty party." He saluted Whitaker. "Monsieur, please come with me." Whitaker rose, shoulders sagging beneath the weight of exposure, as the others looked on with relief and lingering shock. In the hushed drawing room, The storm of suspicion broke at last, leaving only the undeniable quiet of truth and the steady brilliance of Hercule Poirot's deduction. Chapter 12. The confrontation's late afternoon sky had turned and unsteady. Reyes Poirot gathered the remaining guests in the Belgrave Hotel's grand drawing room. The sumptuous velvet curtains were drawn, and the only light came from flickering wall sconces, lending the chamber an atmosphere both intimate and foreboding. On the low table before him lay the key clasped from Francis Wilmington's chain, the blank regret slip, and a single, unbroken crystal watch face, a silent testament to the crime's theatricality. Poirot stood, hands clasped behind his back, and surveyed the circle of faces. Sir Reginald Smythe sat with his jaw clenched. Lady Florence Thorne's pale cheeks trembled. Clarence Beaumont's dark eyes were shadowed with unease, and Lady Winchester leaned forward, rigid with apprehension. At the centre of Poirot's attention sat Edward Whittaker, once composed, now shifting in his seat as though restless under a magnifying glass. "Amos," Poirot began, voice low. "We have travelled far together in this labyrinth of deception. We have sequenced the shattered watch, decoded the blank testament, catalogued false leads, and unearthed hidden family ties. Tonight, we confront the architect of these machinations." He placed the key clasp before Whittaker. "Monsieur Whittaker, this tiny key opened Lord Wilmington's safe. You had exclusive access when you oversaw the removal of documents. You then replaced the will with a blank warning, knowing it would sow confusion." Whittaker's fingers tightened on his knee. "You are accusing me," he said quietly. Poirot nodded. "I accuse no one without proof. Witness the handwriting comparison between your drafts and the forged sea letters." He produced side-by-side copies, each letter form identical. Whittaker's eyes flicked to the paper, recognition flashing. "I accuse you of lacing the sherry with laudanum to immobilize our victim. My valet identified your medicine vial among your papers." Whittaker stiffened. "You have no evidence of that," he protested. "Ah, but you left the cork, stained by drug-laden sherry, in your handwriting. Hell, for laudanum." Poirot tapped the cork gently. "And you sealed the vial's label beneath your legal pads." He stepped forward. "Monsieur, why resort to poison when you possess the will? Why disguise your intent with dramatics, sir? Broken watch crystal, planted gloves, whispered letters." Whittaker's composure crumbled. He rose abruptly, pacing before the hearth. "You do not understand." He spat. "I loved Frances, my childhood friend. Our families intertwined. She was presumed dead. He, my client, her brother, inherited everything. I sought to restore her rightful legacy." His voice cracked. "I stole the will because I believed Frances alive and in hiding. I thought to protect her interests until she returned." He paused, shoulders slumped. "I never meant murder." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "But you did more than steal a document. You drugged Lord Wilmington to facilitate the theft. You shattered his watch to distract us. You forged Eleanor's letters to implicate others. Your cloak of charity was but a guise." He produced the shattered crystal face. "Why damage the watch rather than simply pocket it?" Whittaker's eyes brimmed. He swallowed painfully. He prized that watch above all. "I thought the broken crystal would draw suspicion to others, beguile your investigation, gave me time. I was desperate." He turned to the assembled guests. "I only meant to protect a lost sister's claim. I never wished him harm." Lady Thorne rose, voice shaking. "You drugged him. He could have died from that poison." Whittaker looked at her, guilt etched deep. "I did not foresee that. My instructions were to induce deep sleep, nothing more." Lady Winchester crossed her arms, face cold. "And what of Frances's key in the portrait? Did you know of the secret compartment?" Whittaker rubbed his temples. "I discovered it in Frances's old papers. She confided in me her fear that her brother would destroy." Her legacy. I learned of the compartment and the key's inscription. I meant to retrieve the will, then return it intact. So Reginald spoke then, voice taut. You put him at risk and misled us all. Your justifications do not absolve you. Whitaker fell silent, head bowed. The hush that followed was heavy on acknowledgment that Poirot's little grey cells had pierced every veil. Poirot stepped forward, addressing Whitaker kindly yet firmly. Monsieur, you are no common criminal, but your betrayal was grave. The law will determine your fate. Yet I trust Frances Wilmington. Once she returns, will understand the lengths to which you went on her behalf. He turned to the others, Samus. You witnessed how deception can twist noble motives into tragedy. Let us hope that the sister believed lost will emerge to heal these wounds. Walking to the table, Poirot gathered the key, the cork, and the crystal. Monsieur Whitaker, I ask you to accompany the authorities, for now. The curtain falls on this act of subterfuge. The solicitor nodded, resigned, and allowed the hotel manager to guide him from the room dot as the door closed. Poirot lowered his voice, addressing the remaining circle. Thank you, Samus, for your fortitude. Tonight, we have seen how passion and principle can become entangled. Tomorrow, we shall await Frances Wilmington's return and restore Lord Wilmington's final wishes. He inclined his head. But for now, let us allow this house of intrigue its brief peace and reflect upon the fragile nature of trust. In the dim drawing room, frames and furniture seemed to breathe a collective sigh. Poirot, standing amid the gathered clocks and letters, allowed himself a satisfied smile. The confrontation had revealed the truth, and justice not merely formal, but moral would follow. And as the guests dispersed into the night, the little grey cells rested. Content that balance had been restored. Chapter 13. A desperate attempt to escape. The moon hung low over Belgrave Hotel, its pale light filtering through the tall windows of the East Wing. The grand corridors, once bustling with crisis and inquiry, now lay unnaturally silent. Only the distant echo of Poirot's footsteps disturbed the hush as he strolled toward the service stairwell. Intending to inspect the route by which Monsieur Whitaker had been escorted after his dramatic unmasking, something in the detective's mind urged caution. A faint whisper of unease as Poirot reached the ornate railing overlooking the mezzanine. A sudden commotion erupted from below. A harsh cry rang out, "Stop him!" followed by the hurried clatter of running feet. Poirot's keen ears caught the distinct sound of a door slamming shut and the rattle of a key in a lock. Without hesitation, he descended the stairs to a time dot at the ground-level landing. Poirot emerged into a narrow service corridor dimly lit by sconce lamps. Ahead, he saw the hotel porter, hastily summoned, wrestling with an empty coat. The porter gasped. He slipped from my grasp. Monsieur Whitaker, he had the spare key too. The maid's exit. I tried to stop him, but he was too quick. Poirot stooped to retrieve the fallen key from the porter's outstretched hand. Its shape was unmistakable, the same small clasp key he had found hidden in the portrait. Gracefully, straightening, he pocketed the key and called out. Where did he go? The porter pointed to a heavy wooden door marked staff only, through the narrow window pane. Poirot glimpsed a figure slipping into the darkness beyond. Stay here, Poirot instructed, voice calm yet commanding. He touched the porter's arm gently. Fetch Monsieur Crowley and secure the main entrances. No one must leave. Turning back, Poirot grasped the door handle and eased it open. A blast of cool night air met him, carrying the distant trampling of feet and the faint whistle of wind through the hotel's service exit. The corridor beyond led to the cobblestone alley behind the building. Footprints, fresh impressions in the damp stones marked the way toward the rear gate. Poirot paused to steady himself, lifting the lamplight overhead. He noted the footprints hurried, and even one shoe nearly slipping in a puddle, they proceeded down the alley toward the wrought iron gate that separated the hotel grounds from Belgrave Street. Poirot's mind raced. If Whitaker reached the street, he could vanish into London's labyrinthine night. With deliberate steps, Poirot followed the trail, the lamplight bobbing above his head. The racket of distant traffic mingled with Poirot's soft, measured breathing. He reached the gate as the hinges groaned under the weight of unlocking. A figure thrust the gate open and began to slip through. "Stop," Poirot called, voice carrying conviction. The figure, a tall man in a solicitor's coat, paused, then lunged forward. Poirot advanced swiftly, catching the man's sleeve and pulling him back. "Monsieur Whitaker, you are not going anywhere." Whitaker jerked free with a brutal shove, stumbling over a flower pot. "Let me go," he hissed. "You don't understand. I must find her." He darted toward the street, but Poirot, light on his feet, intercepted him with a smooth pivot. Grasping his arm, "Calm yourself. Francis Wilmington will return in due course, and all questions will be answered." Whitaker wrenched his arm free and charged again, but in doing so, kicked at a crumpled bundle he held close to his chest. The package dropped, and papers, handwritten drafts, torn notebook pages, and a folded document sealed with a wax FW, spilled across the cobblestones. Whitaker froze, chest heaving. Poirot knelt. Gathering the scattered sheets, the seal broke on contact. The final will, inscribed in Francis's unmistakable hand, was revealed. Poirot held it aloft, the moonlight glinting on the wax. "Monsieur, your haste hasn't done your plan. You meant to deliver these to my hands, not leave them in peril of the rain and the gutter." Whitaker's shoulders sagged in defeat. Poirot placed the will carefully in his coat pocket. "Your actions endangered not only your client's legacy, but a man's life. You attempted to flee, and in doing so, risked losing the very truth you sought to protect." Whitaker's voice broke. "I panicked. I feared the others might intercept these papers and destroy them. I thought if I could find Frances, I could secure her safety and then come back to explain." His gaze drifted to the paper strewn at Poirot's feet. "I never intended for anyone to be harmed." He looked up, eyes pleading still. "I must find her before they do." Poirot rose gracefully and extended a hand. "Monsieur, the hotel entrance is secure. Your path lies not in flight, but in resolution. Return with me, and we shall await Francis together. Now you will not escape, but in time you may yet be forgiven." He guided Whitaker back toward the hotel, the broken fragments of evidence left undisturbed. Behind them, the porter and Monsieur Crowley emerged from the shadows, lantern in hand. Crowley exhaled with relief. "Monsieur Poirot, I feared the worst." Poirot offered a small smile. The little grey cells anticipated this final gambit. The desperate attempt to escape was but an act of fear. "Let us now lock the gate and return indoors, where the final pieces await their moment." As the heavy gate swung closed and latched behind them, Poirot paused to ensure its secure click. Then, through the softly falling rain, he led Whitaker back up the alley, each step measured and purposeful, closing the chapter on a desperate attempt and setting the stage for the final revelations to come. Chapter 14, the final piece, falls into placid hush following Whitaker's frantic flight lingered in the corridors of the Belgrave Hotel as Poirot led the solicitor back through the grand entrance hall. The echo of their footsteps faded, leaving only the distant patter of rain on the window panes inside. The other suspects Lady Thorne, Sir Reginald, Beaumont, and Lady Winchester gathered once more in the drawing-room at Poirot's summons, their faces a mixture of apprehension and relief. The stage was set for the concluding maneuver, and Hercule Poirot, standing before them, held the final piece of the puzzle in his elegant grasp. Msamus, He began, voice measured. Thanks to Monsieur Whittaker's impulsive attempt to flee, we have recovered the genuine testament of Lord Wilmington and the chain clasp bearing Francis's initials. Yet these alone do not reveal the culprit's complete design. There remains one detail, subtle and almost overlooked, that binds all elements together. He placed the retrieved will on the table, its wax seal unbroken at the corner, and then produced a folded slip of paper extracted from Whittaker's bundle. This, Porritt continued, is a fragment of Francis's own letter, torn sharply and stained with sherry. He unfolded the paper carefully, revealing a few lines written in a delicate, confident script. My dearest brother, I fear I cannot remain hidden much longer if I cannot find the courage to return. Know that I have entrusted my fortune to those who loved me first. Porritt let silence fall as each person absorbed the meaning. This note, he said quietly, proves that Francis did not intend to stay in the shadows indefinitely. She planned her homecoming but was hesitated by fear. A betrayal. He looked at Whittaker. You recovered her will, but this fragment reveals that someone among you wished to prevent her return by stealing the testament and replacing it with emptiness. The culprit hoped that no heir would claim Lord Wilmington's fortune, leaving the estate to default heirs, perhaps even to themselves by technicality. Beaumont's lips parted. But Lord Wilmington's estate would then pass to his next of kin, Flora's children. He trailed off, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. Porritt nodded. Precisely, Monsieur Beaumont. The inheritance law dictates that, absent a valid will, the estate devolves to the nearest living relatives, in this case Lady Winchester, as a sister, would inherit unless Francis herself emerged. He turned to Lady Winchester, whose expression had grown pale. Madame, you stand to benefit most if Francis remains lost. You had both motive and means to ensure the will's absence, and to delay any heir's return, Lady. Winchester's gloved fingertips brushed the edge of the testament. I would never harm my brother's sister, she protested, voice quavering. But I confess, I feared that the emergence of Francis would jeopardize the family holdings I have long safeguarded. Her eyes flicked to Sir Reginald. I only moved the key clasp during restoration of the portrait frame. I did not know it would unlock the safe. Porritt's gaze was steady. Yet you knew of the secret compartment from your restoration notes, and you had access to Francis's papers, access you exploited to forge the regret note, to plant the glove, and to send misleading letters. He paused, letting the accusation settle. Lady Thorne rose, voice firm. No, it was not her. Lady Winchester may have erred in judgment, but she did not orchestrate the poison or the theft. She lacked the ruthlessness. She turned to Sir Reginald. And you, who held her trust, did you not destroy Eleanor's letter to protect yourself? You had the same motive, to secure Florence's inheritance. Sir Reginald recoiled. I did not intend inheritance. I sought redemption for Eleanor's death, yet I did not harm Lord Wilmington. His eyes flicked to Whittaker. And you, the solicitor, schemed for Francis's benefit, yet you too resorted to poison. He sank back, guilt and anger warring in his expression. Porritt raised a hand. Each of you bears both motive and small opportunity, but only one among you possessed the necessary combination of motive, means, and psychological intent to commit the second crime, attempted poisoning, and to manipulate everyone with misdirection. He produced a small phial from his waistcoat pocket, the empty vial of laudanum. This was labelled with my name by the culprit, hoping I would overlook the label beneath your briefcase, Monsieur Whittaker. When I extinguished the lamp during your flight, I noticed its reflection, your mistake. He turned to the assembled guests. Consider the sequence, the shattered crystal to distract, the forged letters to implicate others, the stolen will to prevent Francis's claim, and the laudanum to ensure Wilmington's silence. Only one of you had full knowledge of Frances's key, access to the portrait frame, and the ability to forge her handwriting convincingly, skills possessed by an art historian with legal expertise. Lady Winchester's eyes brimmed as realization dawned. They thought me cunning, but I was only a restorer, not a forger. I may have mishandled secrets, but I could never craft such elaborate deceit. Porritt inclined his head. Indeed, madam. You lack the confidence in chemistry this crime required. He addressed Whitaker directly. Monsieur Whitaker, you are both solicitor and amateur chemist, with access to Frances's papers, my medical supplies, and the hotel's private suite. Whitaker's shoulders slumped. I admit it. He whispered, I did not mean to kill. I only wished to buy time for Frances. Porritt accepted the confession with a quiet nod. Your remorse is noted, yet the law will judge based on result, not intention. However, your final act attempting to flee with the will seal your guilt. He turned back to the group. Msamas, the final piece has fallen into place. Frances Wilmington is the rightful heir, her will recovered and unspoiled. Yet the true villain is one driven by noble motives gone awry. Now, we await Frances's return to deliver both justice and restoration. He straightened, his mustaches quivering with satisfaction as the rain eased outside. A messenger arrived with word that a lady requesting privacy waited in a nearby carriage. The room fell silent, every eye on Porritt. He offered a slight bow. Mesdames et messieurs, let us welcome the final heir of Lord Wilmington. With that, he motioned them toward the grand doors, ready at last to reveal the missing sister and bring the mystery to its ultimate resolution. Chapter 15. The final gathering. Late afternoon sun filtered through the stained glass windows of the Belgrave Hotel's grand ballroom, casting kaleidoscopic patterns upon the polished parquet floor. An unusual hush fell over the assembled company. Sir Reginald Smythe, pale-faced yet dignified. Lady Florence Thorne, her gloves removed now, hands clasped before her. Clarence Beaumont, restless in his seat. Lady Winchester, composed but with a spark of apprehension in her dark eyes, and Monsieur Dupont, whose loyalty trembled in the wake of recent turmoil. At the head of the room stood Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed, his mustaches quivering with purpose. Poirot motioned to the servants, and a long oak table was drawn forward. Upon it lay the key clasp from Frances Wilmington's chain, the broken crystal watch face, the genuine will sealed in red wax, and the various letters, some crumpled, some pristine, bearing the infamous signature C. A single white glove rested beside them, its embroidery crisp and waiting. Poirot surveyed each witness with calm authority. Msamas, he began, voice resonant. We have convened here at the cusp of a momentous revelation. Behind each of you lies a history intertwined with Lord Wilmington's fate. Childhood bonds, family grievances, secret affections, and professional duties. Tonight, these objects will speak their truths, and your own reactions will speak theirs. He paused, allowing the gravity of his words to settle. A servant poured each suspect a small glass of sherry. Though none dared sip, Poirot raised his glass in a gentle salute to clarity. He intoned softly, then placed it aside and touched. First, he continued, observe the key clasp. He lifted it on a fine velvet cushion. This belonged to Frances Wilmington, presumed lost. It unlocked the secret compartment in the portrait frame, which in turn revealed the key to the hotel safe. Note how its initials F.W. are engraved with precision. Who among you recognized this clasp before its discovery? Eyes darted. Lady Winchester glanced away. Sir Reginald's fingers brushed the lapel of his coat. Beaumont's gaze fell to the floor, Lady Thorne's brow furrowed. Double quotes next. The broken watch crystal. Porritt picked up the jagged fragment, twirling it between thumb and forefinger. This shattering was no accident. It was the grand distraction meant to draw our attention to shattered time. While the will was removed under cover of chaos, who here lamented the passing of ours most vocally, Sir Reginald inhaled sharply, recalling his bard apology to Florence. Lady Thorne's eyes glistened with remembrance of past regrets. He laid the crystal down and slid the genuine will toward the center of the table. Here lies the testament of Lord Wilmington, sealed by Francis's own hand. I ask you to note the unbroken wax, a symbol of undiminished intention. None of the forgeries or substitutions could mimic this seal without leaving its mark. Who among you feared this document so greatly that you replaced it with blank regret? The room's temperature seemed to drop. Even the servants paused their discreet fanning. Porritt then placed the crumpled letters before them. These letters, signed C, were forged to mislead. They bear the strokes of many hands, the solicitor's practiced script, the art historian's flourished curves, the banker's confident loops, the valet's hesitations. Each letter was a promise or a threat intended to fracture alliances. Note how each of you received one, each adapted to your fears. He tapped the paper lightly, and a soft echo filled the silence. Finally, he presented the white glove with its 3 interlocking circles, a symbol of Amberley Manor and the Cavendish Thorne legacy. This glove was planted to implicate you, Madam Thorne, and to divert suspicion from the true culprit. Yet its embroidery is flawless, a contrast to the shattered crystalline, the ragged letter edges. It invites us to see both elegance and deceit. Porritt folded his hands behind his back and took a deep breath. You have witnessed these clues before, but tonight I ask you to consider not only the objects, but the secrets they conceal. Secret compartments, secret affections, secret resentments. His gaze swept the circle. Observe each other's manner, the tightening of a jaw, the quickening of a breath, the flicker of an eyelid. These are the true revelations, more telling than any forged parchment. He nodded to Monsieur Dupont. The valet stepped forward to close and lock the ballroom's doors, ensuring no further intrusion. Porritt's eyes shone. Msamus, in a short while, I shall disclose the sequence of events and present the identity of the mastermind. Until then, reflect upon what you see and, more importantly, what you feel. He gestured toward the evidence. Walk among these objects. Let them stir your memories. Return to your seats when ready. One by one, the suspects approached the table. Lady Winchester brushed her fingertips over the unbroken seal of the well, her expression inscrutable. Sir Reginald traced the key's engraving, lips moving as though mulling a name. Beaumont closed his eyes at the sight of the broken crystal, as if unwilling to confront time's cruelty. Lady Thorne lingered over the embroidered glove, her gaze soft with sorrow. Dupont stood respectfully at a distance, silent witness. Porritt observed every nuance, storing each reaction within the recesses of his little grey cells. As they returned to their places, Porritt stepped forward and raised his hand once more. This gathering serves one purpose: to unite all our suspects in a crucible of truth. When I reveal the resolution, you will understand how each clue led inexorably to the solution and how each of you played a role. In this tragedy of ambition and devotion, he allowed a final moment of silence, the only sound the distant roll of thunder beyond the windows. Then, with a graceful bow, he stepped back. Prepare yourselves, Msamus. The grand reveal approaches, but remember the line between justice and mercy lies in understanding the human heart. With that, Porritt turned toward the heavy curtains, ready to usher in Frances Wilmington herself and to bring the final act of this intricate drama to its long-awaited close. Chapter 16. The reveal. A hush fell as the grand door swung open. admitting a tall figure draped in a sable cloak. Rain-damp curls framed a pale face, and a single white glove, matching the one planted earlier, lay in her hand. Frances Wilmington paused on the threshold. Blue eyes luminous with a mix of relief and trepidation, Poirot stepped forward, bowing slightly. "Madam," he said, voice warm yet firm, "permit me to present the final piece of this intricate puzzle." He turned to the assembled company. "Your presence here honors her brother's memory and secures her rightful place." Then, addressing Frances, he produced the sealed will. "This testament, written in your own hand, was stolen and concealed by one you trusted." He laid it gently before her. Gasps rippled through the circle. Frances's breath caught. She looked at each face in turn. The friend who had sheltered her secrets, the banker whose admiration she had returned in letters, the friend's uncle whose grief had driven him to conceal her identity. Finally her gaze settled on Edward Whittaker, who stood near the low table, shoulders hunched, eyes downcast. Poirot turned to Whittaker. "Monsieur Whittaker, you believed Frances lost to the world, presumed dead in that distant carriage accident. Yet you discovered her survival in the archives of Amberley Manor." He placed the tiny key clasp upon the table. "You retrieved this from her own chain, where it would open the hidden compartment behind the family portrait. From there, you took the true will, replacing it with a blank sheet marked regret, intending to deprive all heirs until Frances herself emerged." He paused, allowing the weight of the accusation to settle. Whittaker's face drained of blood. He bowed his head. "It was the only way I could protect her inheritance, Monsieur Poirot. I never meant to harm her brother." Poirot's little grey cells glimmered with compassion and sternness alike. "Yet, monsieur, your method was grievously flawed. You drugged Lord Wilmington's sherry with laudanum to immobilize him, ensuring no interruption during the theft. You shattered his cherished pocket watch crystal to distract us from the theft of his testament. You forged letters in the name of Eleanor Cavendish to sow discord among the suspects. Each act compounded deceit upon deceit." He drew the laudanum vial from his waistcoat and held it up. "This cork, bearing your monogram, a fatal oversight." Whittaker's shoulders shook. "I panicked. I thought by removing the will and delaying its return, I could buy time to secure Frances's future. When I learned you suspected me, I fled into the night, an act of desperation. Not malice." Poirot inclined his head. "Desperation has its perils, monsieur. It wrought near tragedy. Lord Wilmington might have died if the dose had been greater." He turned to Frances. "Mademoiselle, your brother's life was endangered under the guise of protection." Frances's eyes filled with tears. She stepped forward, voice trembling. "Edward, you were my family's trusted advisor. I entrusted you with my secrets. Why not simply tell me?" Whittaker looked up, tears in his own eyes. "I feared they would seize your fortune before you could claim it, madam. I thought secrecy was safety." Poirot folded his hands, and secrecy bred catastrophe. "Yet all is not lost. Monsieur Whittaker has recovered the genuine will, sealed and intact." He offered it to Frances, who took it reverently and placed it in her reticule. "Justice will follow, monsieur, but so too will mercy for noble intent turned wry." He addressed the remaining guests, Zamas. "This mystery has been as much about human hearts as about stolen documents. Betrayal often wears her. Friends, offer of help. Now that Frances has returned, let healing begin." Lady Thorne stepped forward, hands extended. "Frances, I am so grateful for your safety." Frances embraced her gently. Sir Reginald approached, hand on Frances's shoulder. "My dear cousin, welcome home." Beaumont bowed deeply, tears glistening. "Mademoiselle, your return brings hope." Lady Winchester, composed yet visibly moved. Offered a small smile and a nod of respect, Poirot watched the reunion, his expression softening. Then he turned to Whitaker. "Monsieur, the authorities will take you under consideration, but know that your devotion will not be forgotten." He gestured to Monsieur Crowley, who had entered with two policemen. "Gentlemen, please attend to Monsieur Whitaker." As the officers gently escorted Whitaker away, Francis looked back at Poirot. "Monsieur, your insight has restored my world." Poirot bowed again. "It was my honor. Mademoiselle, the little grey cells seek justice and today. Justice and restoration walk hand in hand." He tipped his hat, and the grand drawing-room, once rife with suspicion, now brimmed with hope and the promise of new beginnings. Chapter 17. Outcome and justiceth morning after Francis Wilmington's return dawned. Calm and cool, the hotel's gardens washed clean by the night's rain. In the grand drawing-room, sunlight filtered through the tall windows, revealing the polished table where Poirot had staged his revelations. Only a few items remained. The genuine will, the broken watch crystal now framed beneath glass, and a single white glove pressed flat under a crystal paperweight, symbols of a mystery resolved and a justice served. Francis stood by the table, her posture noble yet softened by weariness. Round her gathered the principal players in the drama. Lady Florence Thorne, whose gentle regard betrayed relief; Sir Reginald Smythe, bearing the quiet dignity of a man forgiven; Clarence Beaumont, who hovered anxiously as though wishing yet to speak; and Lady Winchester, whose composed presence hinted at private atonement. Poirot, standing at the head of the table, addressed them all with his characteristic grace. "Msamus," he began, voice calm and assured, "we have seen the delicate balance between intention and action, and how a single misstep can lead to consequences unforeseen. Today, we attend to the aftermath and to the justice that must follow." He turned to Francis. "Mademoiselle, your rightful inheritance awaits, the will you penned. Now recovered, names you solere. Yet the law demands formal proceedings for Monsieur Whitaker's breach of trust and use of poison, however unintended its effect. I trust you will bring this gentleman to the proper authorities." Francis inclined her head. "Yes, monsieur." Poirot, "Though I forgive Edward for his motives, the law must take its course. I will ensure he faces the charges with the benefit of his remorse." Her voice wavered only momentarily, and the others nodded in respectful agreement. Poirot then addressed Lady Thorne. "Madam, your inheritance as next of kin would have followed in Francis's absence, yet you acted, however misguidedly, out of familial love. Will you accept your restored share of the Umber estate?" Lady Thorne's eyes shone. "Aye. Well, with gratitude and with a promise to honor Eleanor's memory in service to the community the family estate supports." Sir Reginald stepped forward, with Francis returned, and Lady Thorne's rightful holding secure. "There remains the matter of legacy. I offer my stewardship of Emily's gardens, that they may flourish once more." His earnest gaze met Francis's. She smiled warmly. "Your dedication is most welcome, Reginald." Poirot next turned to Clarence Beaumont. "Monsieur Beaumont, you feared your affection for Francis might go unspoken. Now that she has returned, do you wish to declare your intentions?" Beaumont swallowed and bowed deeply. "Mademoiselle Wilmington, if I may speak frankly, I have long admired your courage and kindness, if you will permit it. I wish to continue as both friend and steward of your charitable endeavors." Francis regarded him thoughtfully, a gentle smile forming. "Your friendship has been steadfast, Monsieur Beaumont. I accept your support. Now and always." Lady Winchester remained poised, her dark eyes contemplative. Poirot addressed her last. "Madam, your role in uncovering the portrait cipher was invaluable, though your methods strayed into secrecy. Will you continue as the family historian, restoring heritage with integrity. Lady Winchester inclined her head. I will devote myself to preserving both truth and art, with no further secrets concealed. With apologies to the assembled guests, Porritt excused himself briefly, leaving Frances to confer privately with her counsel. The detective stepped into the hallway, where Monsieur Dupont awaited. Holding a small parcel, Porritt accepted it, a pressed flower wreath that had been found among Frances's things and meant for Lord Wilmington's memorial. He placed it gently in his breast pocket, a final token. Dupont, he murmured, leave it by the hearth, so that every gathering here remembers the man who brought us together. Returning to the drawing room, Porritt resumed his place. The atmosphere was no longer tense, but suffused with quiet resolution. Frances re-entered, accompanied by a solicitor and the hotel manager, Monsieur Crowley, who bowed respectfully. Msemis. Frances announced, Monsieur Whittaker has been formally charged. He will stand trial, and I have pledged to testify to his noble intentions, hoping for mercy. As for Lord Wilmington's legacy, I intend to continue his philanthropic work. In partnership with each of you, a murmur of approval rippled through the room. Porritt allowed a small smile. Justice, while tempered with compassion, ensures that order is restored. Yet the measure of true justice lies in rebuilding what was broken: families, trust, and the passage of time itself. He gestured toward the framed crystal and the intact will. Let these reminders stand as proof that though time may fracture our lives, it cannot shatter the bonds born of honesty and devotion. He inclined his head. Mademoiselle, your future is secure, and to us all, a lesson in the delicate art of human nature. Lady Thorne stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Frances's arm. Thank you, Monsieur Porritt. Without your wisdom, our family might have been torn asunder. Porritt bowed. It was my privilege, madam. As the group dispersed into small clusters, some to finalize legal arrangements, others to plan the restoration of Amberley Manor, Porritt lingered, surveying the scene. The once tangled web of deceit had been unraveled, leaving threads of loyalty and affection intact in the quiet aftermath. The detective allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction. Gathering his cane and hat, Porritt turned to Monsieur Crowley. The guests will retire to their rooms for breakfast. I have a train to catch. Crowley bowed. Safe travels, Monsieur Porritt, with a final nod to Frances, who stood in the sunlight. Resolute and serene, Porritt departed the drawing room. Behind him, the grand doors closed softly, sealing the chapter of intrigue. And as he walked toward the station, his little grey cells brimming with memories of cracked crystals and forged letters, the detective reflected on the essential truth that in every mystery, it is not only the crime but the humanity behind it that must be judged. Thus, justice was served, and the bonds of family renewed under the watchful eye of Hercule Poirot. Chapter 18. The closing remark. Drawing room. Now bathed in the soft glow of morning light, held an air of serene restoration. Frances Wilmington stood at the center, the genuine Will safely tucked away in her reticule, as friends and family gathered for one last moment of reflection. Sir Reginald Smythe and Lady Florence Thorne exchanged a warm smile. Their earlier tensions dissolved into renewed affection. Clarence Beaumont hovered nearby, his quiet devotion met by Frances's gentle gratitude. Lady Winchester, ever poised, placed the embroidered glove, no longer a symbol of deceit, but of clothed reconciliation, into Frances's hand. Even Monsieur Dupont, who had witnessed so much upheaval, allowed himself a small, relieved nod. At the head of the room, Hercule Poirot surveyed the scene, his little grey cells content. He cleared his throat softly, drawing the attention of the assembled circle. Msemis, he began, voice resonant yet tender. Tonight we bring our journey to its proper close. We have traversed the labyrinth of human frailty betrayal, born of love, deception woven from fear, and ultimately, redemption sealed by truth. He paused. Letting those words settle, Frances stepped forward, her gaze steady. Monsieur Poirot, you have restored not only my inheritance, but my faith in humanity. For that, I am eternally grateful. Poirot inclined his head, his mustaches quivering with modest pride. It is your compassion and your resilience that restored balance, mademoiselle. I merely guided the evidence to its rightful place. He lifted his cane to tap the floor gently. Let us recall the path we followed. A broken pocket watch to distract, letters forged in C's name to confuse, a stolen will to obscure, and a desperate flight to reveal. Each misstep pointed us toward the ultimate truth that love, when misdirected, can wound as grievously as malice, and yet, when acknowledged, can heal the deepest of wounds. Poirot stepped to the low table, now cleared of all but a single item, the unbroken crystal watch face, mounted in a silver frame. Frances joined him, running her fingertip along its edge. Time, Poirot mused, is at once our most precious possession and our most relentless adversary. Lord Wilmington's affinity for his 8-day watch symbolized his desire to master time's passage. Yet time itself, its fractures, and its recoveries became the motif of our mystery. He turned to Frances. Mademoiselle, this watch belongs to you now. May it remind you that though moments may shatter, they can be carefully reassembled into something whole once more. Frances accepted the frame reverently, her eyes glistening. She placed it on the mantel alongside the family portrait, its crystal as clear and whole as her own future. Poirot's gaze swept the room one final time. And what of justice? He asked softly. The law will deal with Monsieur Whitaker's actions, yet I trust the courts will consider his noble, if misguided, intent. True justice is not vindictive, but corrective. It seeks to restore balance rather than merely punish error. He nodded at Sir Reginald. Your stewardship of Amelie's gardens will nurture the soil where old grievances once grew. You, Lady Thorne, will honor Eleanor's memory with charity and grace. Monsieur Beaumont, your faithful friendship will support Frances's philanthropic endeavors, and you, Lady Winchester, will preserve our shared heritage with integrity. Each acknowledged Poirot's words with a respectful bow or smile. The detective allowed a small, satisfied nod. Miss Amos, in the conclusion of a mystery, the greatest reward is not merely the unmasking of the culprit, but the renewal of trust among those who once faltered. May this circle of friendship, tested by deception, now stand unbroken. He offered Frances his arm. Mademoiselle, it was an honor to serve you and your brother's memory. Frances placed her hand lightly upon his, and it was an honor to witness your remarkable intellect. Monsieur Poirot, she led him with gentle courtesy toward the grand doors. As they passed beneath the archway, Poirot paused and looked back. The drawing room, once fraught with suspicion, now basked in soft laughter and quiet conversation. Guests exchanged warm farewells, an attorney smoothing final papers, servants preparing Frances's carriage, and loved ones embracing the promise of tomorrow. Stepping into the corridor, Poirot turned once more. The little grey cells, he said with a characteristic twinkle, are always ready for the next puzzle, but for now they shall rest, content that justice and compassion have walked hand in hand. With that, he continued on, leaving behind the grandeur of Belgrave Hotel and the bonds he had helped restore, and as the carriage rolled away, the final click of the watch glass echoed in the halls, an enduring reminder that though time may fracture our lives with patience and understanding, every shard may be reunited in beauty once again.